Hi, my name is Brandon Shaw, and this is my wife, Amy.
And this is our story. We met at youth camp in Seminole years and years ago, probably 20 years or so. And then when I was in college at Family of Faith, I started attending church with Brandon at Emmanuel Fellowship, where Pastor Danny and Pastor Mark are from. And I ended up in the same circle of friends that Brandon was in. One evening during a church service, it wasn't like an audible thing, but it was hey, you look up. And I looked up and I saw Brandon.
Amy kept coming over about every weekend and everything, and started liking football and wanting to watch sports with me and stuff like that. So I was thinking, this is kind of interesting here, because I like to watch sports, especially OU football. So I started thinking about it and everything, and praying about it, of course. And at one moment, I'm just like, I think she might be the one.
We got married in July of 2004, so this year was 17 years. And it was at that point, about 6 months into our marriage, that we started talking about having kids. And about month 6, we decided to go ahead and start trying, but nothing was happening for us. And so Brandon finally said, why don't you just go see a doctor, and if nothing's wrong and we just have to wait, then we have to wait. But if there is something wrong, let's go ahead and get it fixed, whether it's you or it's me or it's a combination or whatever it may be. And so at that point, I sought out the first doctor. I sought out the first doctor just to see what was going on. Because up to this point, we had no idea what the end result was going to be. We just knew that we wanted to be young enough to run around with our kids and to be able to play with them. We weren't interested in being older parents. God had other plans. But so going and seeing that very first doctor, I was nervous and I was scared, but I was also really excited about the possibilities of getting, to have a baby of my own. And I go in there and they check me, and they find out that I have two uteri, or a double uterus. And it's not that it's like really rare, but it's rare enough that they wanted to send me to a specialist. And the specialist was very difficult to get into, so we had to wait some time. But in the meantime, in between there, the first doctor that we spoke to said, don't ever get your hopes up, because you're never going to have children. This is just a means to an end, so that I've done everything that I'm supposed to do. And of course I'm crushed. I mean, who wouldn't be? They're finding out that they can't have kids, something that you've always dreamt about. I mean, I grew up in a family of 5, and then all of my aunts and uncles have gobs of children, and both my parents are from large families. And so it was really difficult, because as Brandon and I were talking about having kids, we wanted a big family. We wanted 4 kids. We wanted to be involved in everything. We wanted to conquer the world and do all of those things. But at that moment, I felt completely crushed. I felt that my world was closing in around me, that I wasn't going to get to do the one thing my heart wanted to do, and that was to be a mom. I remember sitting in the car and just crying. I remember thinking again that the world was closing in on me and my family, and that it was never going to get to happen. She said that she would do everything in her power to help us have a baby. And she did everything in her power to help us. And in that moment, my hope, my faith, everything just seemed to come back. I remember coming back from Kansas, because at that point we lived here in McAlester. And I remember my faith being renewed. But I didn't want to get my hopes up so high that I ended up falling again. And so it was like I was teetering in that spot between faith and hope and demise, because that's honestly the way I felt. And so I did everything that Dr. Sullivan told me to do. I ate the right things. I exercised the way she told me to do. I did everything that I could possibly do to get myself ready to have the baby. And again, loss after loss, and heartache after heartache. And finally, I just said, I'm done.
Well, of course, we all wanted to get pregnant and everything, and I mean, we wanted to have kids and everything. So at first, I was always really excited. I was like, yeah, we're pregnant and everything, and then boom, a miscarriage would come. And after a while, after this kept going on, the cycle, I just gave up. I'm like, every time she say, oh, I'm pregnant, I'd be like, nah, no, you're not. Or, nah, it's going to be another miscarriage. I mean, of course you lose hope and faith and everything, and you're just like, I don't believe this anymore, and I'm not going to get happy by no means, because every time it happens, she has a miscarriage. So after then, I was just pretty much giving up. I was just like, I don't have faith in this no more. I wasn't giving up in the Lord. I was just like, so anytime anything along with getting pregnant would come up, I would just be like, And then Amy would be like, why are you so mad? And everything's like, I'm not mad. I just don't want to get all excited, and boom, there it goes again.
So we had more or less given up on our miracle of ever having a kid, let alone 4, until we were on our anniversary trip, and I think it was our 10th or 11th anniversary, and we get a phone call from a family friend asking if we would be interested in adoption. It was, I don't know, it was a bit of a roller coaster, because we found out that the birth mother was 6 months pregnant. So if we were going to do this, then we had to get in and do the paperwork ASAP. My mom and I drive up to the restaurant where we were going to meet, and we get out and go into the restaurant, and I am just a ball of nerves. Not really sure what God is doing, if he's doing anything, or if this is my flesh, because we just wanted to have kids so bad, if I'm forcing a miracle. And I walk in with my mom, and this 6-month, she was big 6-month pregnant, runs across the restaurant and essentially jumps on top of me, and then lets go and grabs my hands, puts them on her stomach, and says, meet your son. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, I'm freaking out, like, are you crazy? Morning of the planned C-section, she calls me before we even go in, and she's like, how are you doing this morning? I'm like, I'm doing great, I'm fixing my hair. And I said, how are you feeling? She goes, I'm ready to get this child out of me. And I said, well, that's good. And I said, are you about ready to go to the hospital? And she says, yeah, I just wanted to make sure to tell you I'm not backing out. Which honestly, I needed to hear those words, I'm not backing out. And even though we were still scared, and there's so many emotions, I had a little bit more peace, because she's not backing out. And I kept repeating that to myself, almost as like a mantra or something like that. It was like, she's not backing out. She's not backing out. We're gonna get our baby out of this. He's gonna be our baby. And through everything, it was one of the most incredible experiences. I got to wear the daddy suit and be in there with her. I watched them do the C-section, and then they tied her tubes, and then I'm walking over to follow Sullivan, and they throw their hands up and say, "You can't come any closer." And so I just stop and I freeze, and I'm like, "What's wrong?" And one of the nurses could see the fear on my face, and she said, "He's not breathing." There's just no way that God would bring us this far, and that He would finally give us the desire of our heart, and then all of those desires and the promises fall. And then suddenly I heard him crying, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, thank you, Jesus." Like, I'm over there just praying, interceding, going, there's just, of course, there's just no way. Come on, God, just stir my faith. Do whatever you got to do. We can't live through this. I just don't know how we're going to go through this one more time. And he was fine. It's just amazing, the miracle that is Sullivan. And he's about to be 6 years old. He's in kindergarten. The kid he can sound out words. He's great at math. He runs all the time. Basketball. Plays sports. He was the light that we needed, the spark that we were missing. And it was as if my faith was 100% restored.
He's a light everywhere he goes. I mean,
he gives the best hugs.
Yeah.
2 months later, our world came crumbling down. I left my job. I wasn't feeling great. Things just kind of were one thing right after the other. I don't even know how to completely describe how I felt at the moment other than crushed. I felt like I was before the firing squad and I was about to get the last round. I go in, they do all the panels, they draw a ton of blood, and then, my doctor says, "Go home and lay down. I don't want you doing anything else today. I want you to go and lay down." And I said, "You don't have to tell me again. I'm going home. I'm going to lay down." I called Brandon on the way home just to let him know that they're going to call me with any of the results if they come back today. If not, it'll be tomorrow. And that I was going home to rest because that's what I've been told to do. Well, I'm laying down in bed. It's probably 45 minutes to an hour later, and my phone rings, and it's my doctor's office. And I'm thinking, well, that was really fast. And so I pick up the phone, and I'm like, "Hello," and the doctor goes, "Amy, I need you to come in and see me right now." I go in there and they're like, "Sit down." I'm like, "Okay, so I'm about to get the worst news of my life. They're already telling me to sit down." So I sit down, and we're in COVID, so we both have masks on, and she takes her mask off for the first time. Like, this is the first time I've ever seen my doctor's face. And she takes her mask off and she says, "I need you to see my face when I tell you this." And I said, "Just tell me, I already know I'm dying." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Anemic, yes, that's why you feel horrible. And we need to get you in for a blood transfusion today. But you're pregnant." And I'm like, "Shut up." Honest, I said shut up and put my finger up. I was like, "Shut up." And she's like, no, I'm being straight serious with you. You are pregnant. Next day, I'm laying down for my ultrasound, and the ultrasound tech says, "Now, why are you here?" And I said, well, they're telling me I'm pregnant or there's a tumor because there's some sort of heartbeat. And she's like, hang on, I have to go get another order. I can't say anything to you. I'm thinking, oh, great. You know, like it must be a tumor. Maybe it's not a baby. You know, of course my mind goes to the very worst place because of everything we've gone through. And the lady comes back, the tech comes back, and she goes, okay, I have permission to tell you what's going on. And we're like, what? She's like, oh, you're not just pregnant, you're big pregnant. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She says, you're not 6 to 8 weeks pregnant, you're like 25, 27 weeks pregnant. And I'm like, wait, doing the math in my head, I'm like, you're telling me I'm 5 months pregnant? I wear 00 pants. Like, there's no way I'm pregnant. And she's like, no, look. And she turns the screen and you see a spine and you see like features, the baby's features. So we had a very short pregnancy. Ended up being as long as the process of getting Sullivan. It was just a few months and then we were having a baby. So I had to switch doctors midstream because we found out that McAlester didn't have a NICU, and that because I was such a high risk patient, and that because of all of that there was going to be there were possibilities of complications for our baby. And so we ended up getting a doctor in Tulsa that actually had his office in the same hospital that we were going to be at, St. John's. And so the day that I went to see my doctor for the very first time, my specialist, I ended up in the emergency room at St. John's. My blood pressure spiked through the roof. It was like 184 over 130 something. They're like, get here now. You could stroke at any moment and lose the baby. They checked me immediately and they're like, you're going to be having this baby rather soon. And so I'm like, oh, okay, you realize how early we are, right? And they're like, yes, but you know, she's gonna be okay. It's better for her and better for you to get her out. So they admitted me and I ended up completely losing my vision before being rushed down the hallway to have Emory Lynn. When they started dressing me and giving me my spinal, I could still see, but everything was starting to get really, really dark, almost completely black. And then I'm like, my head is killing me and I cannot see. And I remember the first thing that I see when they pulled Emory Lynn out of my stomach, and it was as though someone flipped on the light. We were in the NICU for a total of 3 weeks, and we fast forward and we're home for 2 months now. And she is wonderful. She's healthy. She has grown over 3 pounds and over 4 inches. When she was first born, her foot was as long as the first part of my finger. Now her foot is now twice the size that it was originally. So she has grown so much. She's the size of a typical newborn baby now. She was weighed today at 7 pounds 4 ounces and 20 inches long. So for us, she seems huge, but for everybody else, she seems small. And so it's been interesting to see the reactions that people have to our family. And the number one question has been, well, Sullivan, how's it like being a big brother? And he just ducks his head and says, I got what I prayed for.
Don't give up. I mean, when you think there's no way that things can be happen or things are possible is don't give up. Have faith in God. I mean, because you just heard our story here and what God has done through us. I mean, God can do anything. A lot of people like say, "Oh, God took my loved one." I mean, I just can't believe in God because I just lost my husband or my dad or my grandparents and everything. How could God do that? I mean, God can do anything, and just don't give up on Him. I mean, God has been awesome with me and Amy. Now we have two awesome, wonderful, lovable kids, Sullivan and Emery, and God is faithful.
I just remember every time that there's always someone that has it a whole lot worse than we do, and that we can be so self-centered and think that the world revolves around us, and when it really revolves around God. And if we can remember that, then all things are possible when there is no more room to hope.